and this is the first week of the NFL season. I am pumped. RotoPros welcomes everybody. Josh Kronfeld here with my co-host Chris Durrell. How are you, Chris?
Oh, I'm more than excited. As you can see, I got my number 69 Rodeo Jared Allen jersey on. I'm ready for Sunday. Absolutely ready. Last night was kind of I don't know, it was a boring game, but it was good to have NFL back. I was kind of tilting with all the penalties and shit that was going on, but I'm ready to go, that's for sure.
Yeah, last night went exactly the way I expected it to. I don't even know what the spread was. I'm assuming it was like 4 or 5 points. So for Philly, it's going to be, I'm not just saying that because of the result, but that's, that's about right. A lot of people think Atlanta's better, but, with the home matchup, Philly close. But, a good showing for Ajayi, good showing for Julio, and that's about it. And Aguilar did all right, but nothing special. But, yeah, it was a good first game. More importantly, the season is back. We have a huge Sunday slate coming up, and Chris and I are here to break down game by game of our favorite plays, who we like for cash, who we like for GPP, why, talk about some injury news that may affect who we're taking and why, and who, even if we're not taking them, we'll bring up who is definitely in play for our viewers to decide as well. So with that being said, I don't have it in front of me, but who do you want to start with, Chris?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the slates. I'm going to go game by game on the slates here. So there's quite a few 11 o'clock games. So break down the Buffalo at Baltimore game first. We've got just kind of going to go look at my cheat sheet here. Baltimore's a 7.5-point home favorite, projected for around like 24.5 points. It's a very low. I think it's the lowest over under the week at 40.5. Buffalo has by far the lowest team projection at like 16.5 points this week. So for myself, I would definitely look into, especially with his price this week, looking at Alex Collins is like one of my top running back from points per dollar perspective this week. And I like the correlation plays going with running back and defense. So I'll definitely be pairing in a lot of my cash game and GPP lineups, Collins and the Baltimore defense.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, or what's the phrase?
Yeah, you got it.
Whatever the phrase is, you did it. The Collins in Baltimore deal will probably be the cashiest, most highly owned running back defensive combination on the week. For those who don't know this, what Chris and I are referring to is one of the ways savvy DFS players like to raise their upside in lineups is to correlate the defense you end up choosing and who you expect to have the most dominant week with that team's running back. And why do we do this? We do this because in the NFL, when teams are up by a lot of points, they like to run out the clock. Simply put, defense is dominating. They're just, 3 and outs and getting picks and turnovers and everything. When they're on offense, they're usually up by a lot of points. They're not going to force the issue and embarrass the other team or get injuries and really do anything other than run the ball when that happens. And the defense for the other team, since they're down by so much and on the field so often, they're usually pretty tired and, they're pretty disheartened because the game's basically just over and they have no chance of winning. So if you can get on top of a blowout defense and stick the running back with it, that's usually it's a nice move.
And the other thing that I really like about that correlation is, if the defense is getting turnovers, getting picks when the other team's deep in their own zone, getting picks, fumble recovery, stuff like that, you're not only going to get points with the defense getting those turnovers, but you're also going to get the points with your running back because he's going to be in a good field position to go ahead and get those points off those turnovers. So very highly correlated for sure, and that's definitely my top one this week. As for the passing game, I'm not really looking at Buffalo for like absolutely anything this week. Maybe like a LaShawn McCoy is a deep GPP play, but have very little. But on the Baltimore side of things, are you looking at like a Flacco? Crabtree's new there this year. He's only 5,400 on DK.
I'll probably have a few Millie Maker lineups that literally have the Flacco, Crabtree, and like John Brown, GPP vibe to it. But that's literally a Millie Maker. That's like the type of thing where you're just literally covering the board and it's a pretty good GPP play, to be honest. Baltimore's at home. The season's just starting, so everyone's pumped up. Everyone's healthy. Flacco, I'm not saying he has competition because unless he gets injured or something, I don't really see someone like Lamar Jackson, challenging his role, especially since Robert Griffin's there too. And, he's also in front of Lamar. So, it's Flacco's job, but he's got some guys in the wings. He knows they're there. And he's a good QB. So I would definitely have some Millie Maker GPP lineups with Flacco, Crabtree, and probably either one of his – probably Brown. I think they signed John Brown this offseason. And someone else, Willie Snead, but I don't know what to expect from him. He was good a couple of years ago. Apologize. My dog is making a lot of noise in the background. So if
he likes your calls. That's all. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So if that becomes an issue in a minute, let me know, and I'll just.
If you hear the squeak toy, lock the play in. Anywhere throughout the show, if you hear the squeak toy, lock it in.
Not to steal from our friends at Fantasy Insider. No, I don't remember the one with Al Smizzle.
Yeah. So game 2, jumping into the next game there, we got Jacksonville heading into face the New York Giants. So looking at that game and kind of breaking down the odds of that game, I'll look at that here real quick. So we've got –
Giants should be a couple point favorites, probably about low 40s over under, I would imagine.
Yeah, Jacksonville's a -3 road favorite with a 43.5. So actually the over-under isn't much higher. There is some big players in this game, but Jacksonville's defense, of course, we know is like a dominant defense. So they were number 1 against the pass in DVOA last year, and number 1 – they were the first overall against quarterbacks and wide receivers. So really, I mean, for cash games, I'm not touching the Giants, but I think just because of how dominant their defense was, no one's going to be playing like the Eli Manning, Odell Beckham, and Beckham's back this year. He's super talented, top 3 wide receiver in the whole NFL. So I think, for Millie Maker, large GPP kind of thing, if you want to be contrarian a little bit, I'll definitely have some. Maybe not even Eli so much as just Beckham maybe by himself, just to try and get, he may even get a touchdown. Even if the Giants aren't going to win, he could still get a touchdown or 2 and they still lose the game. He could rack up, 100 yards and a touchdown if he's only 5% owned type thing in GPPs. I think that kind of makes sense for GPPs. So
I agree. This is an interesting game from a DFS perspective. I expect it to be very loud and an exciting game. I don't think Jacksonville is just going to come into New York and, just completely shut everything down. New York does have a pretty shoddy O-line, but, Nate Solder and Hernandez, the second-round pick, came in to solidify it a little bit. Obviously Odell just got paid. He's completely healthy. Saquon's a beast. I expect him to get a lot of catches, be a PPR monster, and, maybe even break one. Jacksonville was susceptible to the run last year. I don't have the rankings in front of me, but I remember that was the one thing their defense was occasionally giving up, some big plays on halfback dive, little right up the middle type things. I'm not counting on that, but I think Saquon's an interesting GPP play. I wouldn't pair him with the Giants defense like we were just talking about with Alex Collins, but I will have some Eli Manning, Odell, Evan Ingram, Saquon, something like that, Giants stacks, again, in a Millie Maker type thing, just because, if the Giants, one of the things that I don't think numbers measure as well, that, as a straight gambler for many, many years, and seeing, money line plays and home advantages versus road advantages, when you start an NFL season in particular, and it's literally week 1, being at home matters. I'm not saying that's going to play a huge, it's going to be the difference, but I like to, Giants at home, I wouldn't be shocked if they put up, 21, 30 points, even though Jacksonville's an incredible defense and we'll definitely have a bunch of picks on Eli and a ton of sacks and, maybe a fumble or 2 from, I doubt Saquon fumbles twice, but either way, it'll be an interesting game. I think it'll definitely over. I would bet the over personally. And Leonard Fournette is definitely a good play against the Giants defense. Actually, you know what? No, I'm sorry. I take that back. I don't know what his price is, but I think it's probably about 7 or 8K. And he will get his receptions. But everyone's healthy. TJ Yeldon's there to get some, PPR points. And Snacks Harrison and this Giants, if anything is above average for them, it's their run D. So I probably won't have too much Leonard Fournette. I like
Fournette 7,100 on DK, 8,000 on FanDuel, and just looking at the DVOA defense, which I like to really look at not just yards per game allowed.
I like because Cole a lot. That's the only one that I forgot.
Yeah, because of the matchup. So DVA really breaks down versus league average, so you can really tell Some teams have easier schedules than others, so I really like to look at that DVOA. And actually, Jacksonville and New York struggled against the run last year.
Oh, wow.
Giants were 26th, and Jacksonville was 27th overall, looking at DVOA defense versus the run. So I definitely would prefer myself the Jacksonville defense because, I think they're going to get a lot of sacks, possibly a turnover. And then you get Leonard Fournette in there as well for that correlation play. I really like that as well. And then that would be more my cash way to go in cash. And then just on the other side of the ball, like I said, I agree with you. You can really attack the Jacksonville. So I think Barkley could have a good debut in his rookie season. And then Odell Beckham. Those are kind of the two plays I'm probably going to mix in some deeper GPP lineups.
Don't sleep on Sterling Shepard, and don't sleep on Evan Ingram.
Yeah. Awesome. So on to the next game. We got Tampa Bay Bucks at the New Orleans Saints.
Woo!
The Saints are big 9.5-point favorites with
game of the week.
Yeah, and the second highest over under at the moment at like 49.5, 50 in some spots. So right around that 50. It's close to that New England Houston game, but definitely looking to New Orleans in a ton of areas. I'm looking at Drew Brees. He's back again. Michael Thomas, he was one of the most consistent wide receivers in the league last year. He had like a 69.8% catch rate last year. So super consistent, gets a ton of targets. I believe he was second or third in targets, 9.3 targets per game last year. And then you got Alvin Kamara. He's probably going to be high owned, but he had a big role last year. He only averaged like 9 carries per game, but he was awesome, elite upside in the passing game. And the other thing with him this year is that we have no Mark Ingram for the first 4 games because of suspension. So Kamara is definitely going to get some extra workload. I'm kind of predicting somewhere between that 15 to 20 carries, probably 25 to 30 touches. So I'm definitely all over him. He's my top cash running back of the week, and I'm going to even have him in GPPs. I love the Michael Thomas Breeze connection as well for GPPs. Just goes together really well. So how are you looking at this game?
I will have it's probably my favorite stack other than Houston this week. Excuse me. I'm big on when I take the QB, like a Drew Brees and the highest over-under of the week. Like I just mentioned before, I like home teams. The Saints in the Superdome are just like a different animal. That's their stats for the last couple of years in that stadium are just so inflated offensively. It's crazy. And last year was the first year that they really took that like defensive step and they became like a not dominant, but pretty good team. And so this week I'm looking at a lot of Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. We mixed in literally. I'm gonna go full on game stack and throw like a Ted Ginn or Cam Meredith in there, and then potentially run it back with like an OJ Howard. Because that's one of my favorite GPP strategies to, in a game like this with just so many points to go around. I don't see, especially, I don't know. Look, Fitzpatrick's not terrible. So, I don't think Jameis is like amazing. So I don't think there's a huge difference in their chances to win this week. Like they're screwed either way, like no matter who was in. So I don't think Jameis not being there is like the biggest, dramatic difference in Tampa Bay's chances to win. Long story short, New Orleans is going to run up the score. They're going to go up, 14, 21 points. And, if you do full on game stack this and want to run it back with someone on Tampa who could get some garbage points late, I wouldn't mind Cam Brate or OJ Howard.
Dog confirms it. Lock in some Tampa Bay guys for correlation. I definitely like that. That's something I did last year as well. So if I'm going with like a stack where, say, New Orleans is going to run up the score, like you said, I might even run thinking that if it is going to go that high scoring, going with like a Breeze, Thomas, and Alvin Kamara, and then on the flip side, going with like a Mike Evans even, paying up there for him as well, because they're going to be throwing to him a lot. He's going to get a lot of targets. He's a GPP play only for me. He had one of the lower catch rates, 52% last year. So he does get a ton of targets, and if they're down, they're going to be firing away, throwing a ton of passes. So Mike Evans, I think, is a good correlation, running Mike Evans and Thomas together, Mike Evans and Alvin Kamara there as well. So definitely like that. So going to
the biggest stud of the week. He's probably the guy, unless he literally knock on wood. I'm not trying to be the biggest jinx ever, but unless he literally gets injured, I don't see any way he doesn't exceed value this week.
Yeah, I like it. So then to the highest over-under game of the week, we got Houston Texans at New England Patriots. And the Patriots in this game are 6.5-point favorites, close to about 30-point projection there, 51 over-under. They're coming off the number 1 passing team last year, the number 4 actually when it came to rushing offense, looking at the DVOA stats. So myself, I'm looking at Brady. I think he, if you're paying up in cash games, I think Brady makes a lot of sense. He led the league in pass attempts last year. Yards, he was up there in touchdowns. I think he was top 5 in touchdowns. He just doesn't matter how old he gets, he just keeps going. And I think to pair him in cash games, if you're paying up in cash and you want to go to England, you think they're going to score that 25 to 35 points, somewhere in that range. Going with a Brady and Gronk makes sense. GPP, I like going with Hogan. He hasn't got a big track record, but he seems to be in that Tom Brady circle of trust. So I think he's got some touchdown upside, definitely for GPPs. The running backs are it's a tough one to call this week. You got Burkhead there. He catches the ball well. You got James White, who's supposed to be involved heavily. I heard one guy on the radio, New England beat reporter, talking about how Jeremy Hill might lead them in between the tackles rushes this week. You got Sony Michel, who I think is going to be active for this game as well. They're rookie. And if New England's going up and spending a first-round pick on a running back, they're going to get him involved. It may not happen this week, so I'm probably going to have zero exposure to him. But it's a little tough call on the running backs. I think they're GPP only for me. On the Houston side, it's hard to go against Nuke Hopkins and Deshaun Watson. I think they have a ton of upside. I think it was last year this matchup where Watson went for like 4 or 5 touchdowns. So definitely going to be looking there as well for GPPs, but I'm not going to be touching them for cash.
Yeah, it's one of my and again, going back to the well here, one of my favorite, stacks of what I've been talking about for GPP in particular. I'm going to have a ton of Watson, Hopkins, maybe Will Fuller, but probably not. I don't know. I'm not sold on him completely yet, but they did look great with Watson last year when they were all healthy. So, Watson to Hopkins is like my combo of the week for QB receiver. Brady's great, of course. Pat's at home. Brady, Gronk, and Hogan, like you just said, circle of trust. James White, probably, and, about equal to Burkhead in that discussion. Sony Michel, I think he'll be a distant third to both of those guys in terms of production this week and probably for the first, third of the season, unless there's an injury or something like that. I don't really think there's any receivers you can trust other than Hogan, Gronk being a tight end. And I would call Gronk cash. And would you call Hopkins cash?
It's tough. He does get a lot of targets. He's going to be the number 1 target. He's probably going to see 10+ targets. So if you're seeing that many targets versus a defense that does allow some through the air, looking at just some preseason ranks, the Patriots are sitting. Oh, just hold on a second there. Yeah, they're middle of the pack when looking at their secondary and stuff like that. But a high-scoring game like that, especially if New England's going to be in the lead, they're going to have to throw a lot. And really, he's the number 1 option. So, like I said, if he's getting 10+ targets, I think he is cash-worthy. He's expensive. And myself, I'm going to talk about Keenan Allen a bit here in a little bit later, but I'm looking more towards Michael Thomas and Keenan Allen as my high-end guys for cash games. So I won't have Hopkins personally in cash.
I want all 3 of them.
Yeah, if I could fit all 3, that would be sweet.
I'm a volume. All I care about is volume with NFL DFS.
That makes sense. Yeah, you're getting the opportunity. You're going to score fantasy points. You're going to have a good shot at scoring fantasy points.
All about volume. It's all about touches. If you can have the rare guys like Keenan Allen, you just said it. Michael Thomas is fantastic. He's not the first one I was thinking of for this. It would probably be Keenan Allen and Hopkins are the 2 that stand out the most to me, with just when they're on and the matchup's right. It's not like an absurdly bad matchup or something. The weather is normal. And especially if they're at home or on the, shootout of a game like this, New England game.
You build around those guys.
They're the first 2 I plug in almost every time, people like that.
Now, I got a question for you before we get into the next game. For cash games, something I like to do personally is start with my running backs, and I like to find and pay up for, if I can, at least 1, sometimes even 2 running backs in the, the top, looking at the top 10 running backs. because they do get the volume. Receivers don't always get, they're getting 10 targets per game is really good for a wide receiver, whereas you get some of these running backs where they're getting 20 to 25 touches no matter what the game script is. And if the game script is even better, especially I think the correlation when a home team is more than a 3-point favorite, that running back is definitely correlated to getting a lot of fantasy points, a lot of touches, especially in the second half. So that's kind of my strategy. Is that something that you look to as well for cash games?
Yeah, 100%. I'll probably prefer a high volume of targets to a high volume of touches. Like if you told me a guy's going to have 30 touches this week, or you told me a guy's going to have 13, 14 targets, 15 targets, I'll probably go with the 15 targets.
Okay.
I don't know. It depends. It's pretty close, but yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. It's almost like you just DFS fantasy. Honestly, not even just DFS. Fantasy football in general is just about the pursuit of opportunity. You want the guys who are going to have the most opportunities to do something, the most touches, the most receptions, the most touches. Whether it's running back, meaning handoffs, catches, receptions, whatever. That's just putting yourself in a situation to hit or exceed value at every position. And if you do that, you will cash and then some every week. If you have every person on your roster hit value, which is what, 2x?
Yeah, 2 to 3x is perfect. Yeah. You hit that every week. I mean, you're doing good.
And usually for me in the past, the hardest position would be the tight end.
Yeah.
It's usually where I would blow it so many times. Taking a risk on some 3.5K guy that's which you can do if you do it, there's times that call for it. But if you just try and finish a lineup real quick off with a cheapo tight end in the past, that's that can be the guy that just doesn't hit value. So sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's exactly what I was looking for. It's just from a strategy perspective. This isn't just a game by game breakdown, but also we like to look at some strategy and share that with you guys. And then you can kind of ask questions of what your process is, because I know my process might be we've just determined that my process is a little bit different than yours when looking at cash games. I like to look at the running backs a little more that are going to get those carries. You're looking more at the wide receiver side of things, but like you said, if you're hitting 2.5x on your lineup, you're doing good. 3x you're definitely cashing. 3x on DraftKings is 150 points.
Right. I will say this, part of the reason that's true for cash for me is because, especially for this week, with all the value there is at these mid-range 3-4K running backs, I like Jalen Samuels a lot. I like Connor this week. You got Royce Freeman. There's a lot of guys in the mid 3-4K range who are getting a lot of opportunity, and that's not necessarily true for wide receiver. There's Keelan Coles as well, but you can't really compare that to a starting running back.
No.
So, that's part of why I would say that my gut tells me to go, looks.
Awesome. Okay, so the next game we're going to get into, my favorite game of the day. We got the San Francisco 49ers traveling to Minnesota, face the Vikings. Last time the Vikings played, they got shit kicked by the Eagles. Still very sad about this. So I think they come out strong. They're 6.5-point favorites, 46 over under. And what I'm kind of looking at most is the passing game. Minnesota had the third best DVOA passing offense last year. San Francisco was 28th in passing defense. Now they do have an upgrade. They went out and they got Richard Sherman this year. I think that's going to help quite a bit in their secondary. So I don't think it's going to be, it's not something I'm looking to in cash, but looking at Minnesota, going with Kirk Cousins, they upgraded their quarterback. I know some people are like, oh, Case Keenum was really good. His splits indoor, outdoor were pretty dramatic. It was 100. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was a 20 to 25 quarterback rating difference between indoors and outdoors. So I'm excited to see Kirk Cousins. I don't think he's going to be for season long. I stayed away from him just because he had a shitty defense in Washington where he had to throw a lot. He's got 4,500 yards in 3 straight seasons. I don't think he needs to do that in Minnesota. The Vikings had a top defense last year when it comes to yards per game, passing, rushing, all that. So I'm definitely going to be looking at. I'm not sure where Sherman's going to be. In the past, he had lined up just specifically on the left side of the defense. The Vikings like to move it around. I know Thielen moves around quite a bit. So I think Diggs is probably, for the most part, going to be on Sherman. So I'm kind of leaning towards Thielen. And with his injury a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I think he may be a little bit lower owned as well. So definitely looking in that direction. I think getting some Cousins in there, I'm going to do that as well. And on this, I mean, the San Francisco side of things, I'm kind of staying away. I don't like playing players against elite defenses, and I still consider Minnesota that. They've upgraded a little bit this year. So what's your thoughts on this game?
I'll probably, again, Millie Maker. I'll do some stacks. I'll do that with most of the home teams, especially when it comes to people like Cousins, the Diggs, who can have those big plays, those 60, 70 yarders worth a lot of, big, long touchdowns. Cousins was one of the best quarterbacks in the league, if not the best last year, I think, in the play action. And I think Minnesota was as well. So it's a very good fit. Diggs, as you know, is just, very explosive when he's healthy. Thielen just complements him wonderfully because you really have to pay attention to him. If you get caught up in Diggs running bombs and stuff, then Adam will just kill you with the short ones. Dalvin Cook should be good to go. I hear he's fantastic health-wise. I'm sure they'll play it smart with him and ease him back. So I'm not going to have a lot of Dalvin because Latavius may be stealing the goal line carries too. So, Dalvin's someone that I'll be keeping an eye on early in the season, but probably not playing that much of. Definitely not going to have literally – again, for fun, I may have a GPP lineup of like Garoppolo and Marquise Goodwin, but that's the only people that I would probably consider. What's Matt Breida's price? Like people like that may hit value because they're so cheap and their point for reception and
4,600 on DraftKings.
Right, like they're going to be losing the whole game for the most part, I would imagine. So I don't know. It's weird. San Francisco, they did weird things. They won games last year, so maybe they'll make me eat my words, but. They're probably a little shell-shocked about the Jurek injury too. That's a tough one to swallow right before the season starts like that. And, but people like Breida, I could definitely see hitting value on that side, but I don't think I really have it. I don't have much Alfred. Everyone's talking Alfred Morris, but when you're losing, you don't really hand off to your running back that much.
So. He doesn't catch the ball either. Yeah. So
exactly. He doesn't catch
game
it.
Script, definitely Breida makes sense. I totally agree with you there. And losing McKinnon, that really sucked for their backfield, which does give us some value week one because the prices have been out for a while. So I definitely like that punt play with Breida. Goodwin, I think, is going to see definitely the most target share in that offense over Garcon. Kind of looked that way anyway in the preseason. And then the tight ends, both teams were, I think, top 10 in fantasy points against the tight end last year. Rudolph, it's tough. Rudolph was good with the other quarterbacks in Minnesota, so it'll be interesting to see. Kirk Cousins did well with Jordan Reed over in Washington, so I think he can come and he's going to like what Kyle Rudolph brings to the table. He's a cheap tight end if you want to go that route. As for Kittle, he's coming off an injury. He's cleared to go week one, but Minnesota, I believe, is number one against tight ends. They got some good linebackers to cover there, so I don't think I'll be going any Kittle this week, but Rudolph definitely for a cheap tight end.
Fine with it. He does very well at home. I'm sure he'll find the end zone at least once this week. I'm done with this game. You ready to move on?
Next game, we have Tennessee Titans at the Dolphins, and that game is one of the lower. It's a 45 over-under, so not too bad. Tennessee is a 1.5-point road favorite at this point. I do like Tennessee a little bit more in this game, especially as a stack. Their running back situation, you got Derrick Henry. He's going to get probably the first and second down runs between the tackles. He doesn't catch the. It's not so much that he doesn't catch the ball well. It's more that his pass protection isn't as good as Deion Lewis. So Lewis is probably going to get some third down plays, probably a nice cheap play on DraftKings where it's full PPR. But for me, I'm looking at some stacks. I'm going to be going with some Mariota. He can get some points with using his legs. But Corey Davis definitely going to try and fit him in, and then even as like a sleeper, I don't like the word sleeper, I guess, but cheaper value play this week would be Tywan Taylor. He had some explosive games in the preseason, rookie that they drafted, top 5 rounds, I believe. So definitely looking at him as well. And then Delaney Walker, he's always every week as long as he's healthy, and he was absent from the injury report this week. He's always a cash play for me. He's a high-volume tight end. I think he was 5th among tight ends in targets last year and a very good catch rate as well. So definitely looking that route. And then on the Miami side of things, the Tennessee's got a really good secondary on the outside. Their weakness is in the slot, and there's definitely some targets to make up there as Jarvis Landry's out of town now. and the one that's taken over is Danny Amendola. So for how cheap he is on both sides this week, and what he allows us to pay up for in the quarterback, the rest of the wide receivers and the running back position, I think I'm going to use him in cash because I believe he's going to get 5 to 10 targets this week. And at that price, if he's getting 5 to 10 targets, I will take that all day, every day.
Yeah, Devontae Parker's out. Jarvis Landry's gone, like you mentioned. Their offense is going to be, at least this week, I would count on a lot of I'm blanking on their running back's name. Kenyon Drake, and I would count on a lot of Wes Welker, honestly. And I'm sure Kenny Stills will get a little love too. But and Gesicki, the tight end, second-round pick, rookie. Adam Gase has been talking about him a lot this offseason. He had a good he had a bad I don't remember. Either way, he had a crazy combine. He's someone that they, is stepping right into a starter role. So I'll probably only really be looking at Amendola, though, in this game for cash. Maybe some Drake love, but not for cash.
Right on. That makes a lot of sense. It's not – there's a very good chance. I bet you that – the odds are probably good. I would bet the under on this game. It just seems like two teams that aren't going to put up a ton of points. But there is a case to be made that they will put up points, and if they are, you definitely want to look for those kind of guys. I don't think Derrick Henry is going to be high on just because of the Dion Lewis shadow sitting there as a third down back, and he's a good pass protector. So if Tennessee gets up early, I think there's a route for Derrick Henry to get all those carries, especially in the second half. If they get up by 10 points, Henry could see 20 carries this week, and if he's going to do that, I think he definitely makes sense as a GPP running back, and he's probably going to be a little bit lower on because there is a ton of running backs in great positions this week. But overall, it's not that exciting of a game, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of people fell in love with Derrick Henry when no other running backs were healthy in the postseason. So he literally was guaranteed, 30 touches, like we were just saying, including receptions. But they paid a lot of money to bring Dion Lewis in, and I have no interest in this game at all, to be perfectly honest. And maybe some Delaney Walker action if you want a tight end you can count on that's a little cheaper than Gronk, but he's not going to screw you and just put up a goose egg.
Yeah, he's the top of that second tier tight ends for sure.
Yeah, but that's about it. And then Amendola for cash. He's very cheap and he's got a lot of target volume with all those departures and injuries. But what do we have next?
If Mariota could just throw a touchdown to himself like every game to get those added bonus points, that would just be tremendous.
Wouldn't it?
Do you remember that from the playoff game?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, never forget that play. Yeah, so next on the list, we've got the Bengals and the Colts in Indianapolis. The Colts are -2.5 favorites, 48 over under. They got Andrew Luck back in the fold. I'm probably going to stay away from Luck this week. Just want to kind of, it's one of those I just want to see what he's going to produce. He hasn't really played a professional game for quite a while here. So definitely going to be staying away from him. Pretty much staying away from him altogether. Maybe some T.Y. Hilton because of his upside in GPPs. But for me, I'm looking at the Cincinnati side of things, just kind of game script. If Indy is going to be ahead in this game, I can see a lot of passing. So I'm looking at Andy Dalton and A.J. Green. And then even in that stack, which is one of my top 5 stacks this week, I'm also looking at John Ross. He'll be looking to rebound. He had some injuries last year in his rookie season after breaking records at the combine with his, I think it was a 4.22 40. And he looked good in the preseason. And he also had some healthy scratches last year. So he's got a lot to prove. And he's facing – the big thing that I'm looking at here is Indy's secondary is ranked dead last. They got a bunch of guys that wouldn't even, probably make the practice squad on a lot of teams. They definitely wouldn't be making starting roster on a lot of other teams. So I think AJ Green can definitely go to town this week. Probably looking at, 8 to 10 targets, 5+ receptions. I think, he probably a good projection, not a ceiling, but a floor for him is probably 80 yards and I would say a touchdown. And then John Ross would be more my GPP play on that side of things.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have much to add there. I'm running short for time. I want to squeeze in as much as we can. So I agree with everything you said, including Ross, and Green is one of the top plays of the week. Hilton is great with Luck, especially at home. Their averages are insane, but no one knows what to expect with Luck yet, so I won't have that much exposure until we see what he can do. Ryan Grant's their number 2 receiver, so he could be good for value. But that's about it. That's what do we got next?
Cool. Pittsburgh at Cleveland. Pittsburgh's a 4-point favorite, fairly low over/under. Doesn't sound like Lev Bell's going to be in the lineup. He can show up Saturday still and get his game check, but it sounds like even if he shows up, he's not going to get many touches. Last year he showed up Monday of week 1, and he only got 10 carries. So looks like it's James Conner. And I'll let you talk about this game because you talked about some value plays in the backfield, Jalen Samuels and stuff. So I'll let you take over.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I was roster baiting a little bit over my own fantasy team as I picked Jalen Samuels up this week, and he got tight end eligibility on Yahoo as a running back, so that's nice. But anyway, he's going to be the guy coming in. Everyone's going to be all over John Connor. He's going to be the most highly owned guy this week, I would imagine. With Le'Veon gone, it's great. He's like 4K, 4,500. He's going to get 20 touches. So yeah, it's great hypothetically, but Cleveland's got a very, very, very strong run defense, and I wouldn't be shocked if the game script kind of favored them this week, and maybe they got out to an early lead on Pittsburgh. Everyone just thinks, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Pittsburgh's going to dominate. Maybe if this game was in Pittsburgh, I would agree, and especially if everyone was there, but it's the beginning of the year, and teams like Cleveland haven't really had much to cheer about later in the year, so this is a rare time for them to actually have hope and be pumped, and I wouldn't want to take a rookie running back going in there. That being said, Jalen Samuels is 3K. He's, that's min price. He's literally going to have very little ownership, whereas everyone's going to be on Connor. So, there's a lot of upside there if Connor busts and, you end up hitting value. Jalen Samuels is also the third down back, so he'll be getting the receptions. He was a big tight end in college at NC State. He did really well. He was a playmaker. So he's a very interesting guy for them coming out of the backfield. And I like him for so many reasons this week. And like I said, I think Cleveland could come out with an early lead. And then who knows, Pittsburgh could be playing catch up. And when you're playing catch up and the run game's not working and you're getting a lot of pressure on your quarterback, that is the definition of when they dump it off to the running back in the flat. So
I like it. Good breakdown there.
Thank you.
Next game up. Going into the afternoon games now that concludes the main slate. We call the main slate, which is in the morning. We've now got the Chiefs at the Chargers, and the Chiefs are minus 3.5-point favorites. Pretty high, 48 over under. We got the passing game. I like the passing game of the Chargers. Rivers and Keenan Allen are again inside the top 5, probably top 3 stacks for me this week. Rivers just tends to throw the ball a lot. He trusts Keenan Allen. I wish his touchdown upside would go up a little bit. I mean, it's hard to look at touchdowns and try and project touchdowns, but when you're looking at touches and stuff, he is right there. So definitely looking at Keenan Allen as one of my top plays. Melvin Gordon, I think, makes a lot of sense as well. He gets a lot. There's no one else there, so he's going to get a lot of volume. He's got no one to compete with. He's one of the few now in today's NFL bell cow running backs, so definitely like looking to him because he's going to get those touches. And on the KC side, it's going to be more of a GPP. We don't really know what Mahomes is yet. He hasn't really played a whole lot. He's taken over a pretty good offense. He's got Kelsey. He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got Kareem Hunt. So they got a loaded offense. It's just a matter of picking and choosing whether if KC gets up early, I think Kareem Hunt could be the play. He could get a lot of carries. But if they're down, I think you're looking at more of a Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes kind of day. So which way are you leaning in this game?
Yeah, good breakdown. I agree as well. Mahomes is an exciting guy. He's electrifying. He runs. He's got a great arm. But, San Diego at home in particular last year had an unbelievable defense. They play very well. They have a good defense in general, but in particular at home. And I just don't see them letting effectively a rookie come in and do anything more than, have a decent day or a good day. But I won't be targeting him. I don't know his price, but if for some weird reason he's absurdly cheap, then yeah, I take it back. He's probably an exciting play because he runs so much, or he doesn't run so much, but he has the ability to, which not every quarterback does. And he's like a little guy, he's all over the, the pocket, and if, we'll see what happens. But like you said, Rivers and Keenan Allen, probably my favorite stack of the week, or one of them at least. It's all reliable almost. It's just they throw these 15, 20 yard chunk plays to Keenan Allen all the time, and it's whenever I don't take him and I see it happening, I'm like, oh, what am I doing?
It hurts.
people are just like leapfrogging me with like 8 or 9 points per per play or whatever it is, like 5 point, 4 point plays on these catches, and so Keenan Allen, Hopkins, Keenan's one of my top plays of the week. Mike Williams will be a red zone threat, so I know they're going to throw him in there. Hunter Henry's gone, and they've brought Gates back. Tyrell the Gazelle is the man, but he's a deep threat. He's a deep play threat. He's not really great in the red zone. I don't really care less about the guy with the dreads, who their third or fourth receiver. I'm forgetting his name. But Mike Williams will be a red zone threat for sure. I won't be building around that very much because I don't like to throw those guys in my lineup. As we mentioned, I like volume. San Diego D, I think, is potential GPP pivot off of Baltimore if you want to make some cash and still have a good defense that gets a lot of defensive touchdowns and plays very well at home. But yeah, that's about it for me on that game.
Still stuck on San Diego, hey?
Yeah, I'm trying. Oh, sorry, Kansas City. My bad. Sorry, sometimes I do that.
No, you mean Los Angeles?
Kelsey's good. I'd rather pay the extra $400 or $500 for Gronk, and I'm not into Mahomes yet. Or I would be if it was like a layup matchup. Then I'd say, yeah, this guy's exciting. Maybe he's going to go off, but I don't like it on the road in San Diego, first game of the year. And Tyreek, again, I don't want to say he's hit or miss, but I prefer him at home in like a safer matchup. I'm forgetting the quarterback's name, but the San Diego's got some very good secondary.
Well, Verrett's out, but they're still ranked preseason number 2. That was with Verrett included in that, so they're probably still top 5. But yeah, moving on, we got another from a fantasy standpoint, anyway, pretty boring game. We got Seattle going into Denver. It's a 3-point favorite for Denver with a 42.5. I think that is the second lowest over/under Vegas total of the week. Myself, I do like looking at home as a favorite. I like looking at the rookie Royce Freeman for running back. Probably going to be leaning more towards him as a GPP play, as a pivot. I don't know how owned he's going to be. On the Seattle side of things, Russell Wilson maybe as a GPP quarterback. He does get his points with his legs as well. And then I like pairing him with Tyler Lockett. Doug Baldwin already said that he's only going to be like 80 to 90% healthy this whole entire season. So Lockett, someone's got to step in. So I think Lockett might start seeing a lot more targets. He does have upside there. So that's kind of where I'm looking at. And then just looking at the stats last year versus tight ends, Denver was one of the worst teams in the league against tight ends. Ed Dixon, their starting tight end, is going to be out. So if you're looking to punt at tight end, I definitely like looking towards Nick Vannett. He's probably going to step in and get the most targets out of the tight ends. It's risky. He's $2,600 on DraftKings, though. So if you're loading up at other positions, just looking for that cheap plug, you're going to the cheap defense, cheap tight end, and loading up at the other positions. Vanette's definitely on my radar as well. Other than that, you got Case Keenum, I talked about, played with the Vikings last year, had a good year. Not really, like I said, with the whole indoor-outdoor thing. I'm looking to see a little bit bigger sample size on that. But he did seem to favor Sanders over Thomas when he was in there in the preseason. And again, preseason, take it with a grain of salt, but it seemed that he really liked Emmanuel Sanders. And I think Thomas is always a little bit higher owned than Sanders. Plus, Sanders is a little bit cheaper. So on that side of things, I don't mind looking at that for a GPP. As a cheaper stack, I guess, if you want to go that route. Not even a cheaper stack, but even just Sanders by himself, because I don't think I'm going to have any Case Keenum.
Yeah, I agree. Royce Freeman's very cheap. I would definitely have some exposure to him this week. I'm not like dying for it. Seattle's still a pretty prideful defense, and if anything, their secondary is kind of their weakness, not the front four. And they have good linebackers, so I'm not like dying to play a rookie running back in his debut against them. But, he's very cheap, and I think he's going to be the guy. So he should be getting, receptions, as much, carries as he can handle. But I'll throw a name at you, Cortland Grant or Cortland, something like that. He was their second or third. He was a receiver they drafted this year for Denver. He's their number 3 guy. And he did have a good preseason with Keenum. He had some, they did show chemistry. So not Cortland to like. Sutton. Yeah. Cortland who? Sutton, sorry. I know I said Grant.
Yeah, he's only $3,600 on DraftKings, so that's a nice punt wide receiver that's going to be on the list. They're going to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, I think, in this game. So having him, I think, makes sense at $3,600 in some GPP spots for sure. So, yeah, the next game up, we've got the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, going into Carolina. So in this game, we've got Carolina, just like last game. Carolina's a 3-point favorite, 42.5 over under, so almost identical to the Denver Seattle. So not a lot of people are going to be, looking that road for a ton of fantasy value. Cam can use his legs. Not really looking at the Dallas side here whatsoever. Carolina's got a pretty good defense, and I really wanted to play DJ Moore this week, but reports are that he's running as the fourth or fifth wide receiver, so he's probably going to stay away for week one. Greg Olsen seems to be his security blanket, so he seems like he's cash viable. He's back this year and healthy. And looking at Devin Funchess, I'm not really buying into the Devin Funchess love at this point. A lot of people are liking him a lot. Most of his production last year came with Greg Olsen out of the picture. He was the only wide receiver in the fray, and McCaffrey was still a rookie at that time, and they ran it quite a bit with Jonathan Stewart. So I think with more mouths to feed this year, Funchess, I just think for what I think his ownership is going to be, he's not going to be really worth the play for a touchdown upside. He's not going to get a lot of yards, but he does have the touchdown upside. I just think he's going to regress this year. And then my favorite play in this entire game is Christian McCaffrey. They're talking about feeding him the ball a lot more. Can't really trust coach speak a lot of the times. AKA last night, the Eagles running Darren Sproles the exact same amount of touches as Jay Ajayi, although Ajayi got the 2 touchdowns finally. But McCaffrey, I think, has that role. They brought in, it was Denver's old running, CJ Anderson to take over the Jonathan Stewart role, but I think McCaffrey's the guy. He catches the ball well, so DraftKings for sure. I think he's even cash viable, and he's just got huge upside. I think he's, even if he only gets 15 carries and 5 to 10 targets, which is very possible for him, how good a receiver he is, I think he makes a ton of sense at his price.
I'll keep it simple. McCaffrey and Michael Gallup.
Oh, Gallup. See, I do like that. He's going to be their number one option rookie. So there is some risk there. I imagine you're probably talking GPP. We've got a bunch of others.
The only 2 people I even care about in this game. I don't think DJ Moore is ready. Not yet. He's number 3 or 4 for them. And, this is going to be McCaffrey all day. They're just going to give it to him in every which way they can. So, and Cam, obviously.
Right. So, yeah, the final game on the afternoon slate is the Redskins and the Cardinals. So we got Arizona is only a 1-point favorite, so it's pretty much a pick'em game with a low over under 44. We got where are you going in this game? This game I've glossed over this game quite a bit so far.
In Arizona, Washington, you said?
Washington in Arizona, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, David Johnson, I think he's back. He's perfectly safe to fire up. He's a good pivot off of Kamara, even though I think Kamara is as safe as it gets. I guess it's not good to have 100% exposure of anybody. So a nice little pivot is David Johnson. He should do very similarly, if not randomly better. Who knows? He's fantastic. He was the highest scoring guy in the league, in regular fantasy 2 years ago before he got injured. So, it's not no one really knows what to expect. I'd rather have Kamara. He's safer, better matchup, everything. You're going to get more, with Ingram out, everything. But I like David Johnson from this game. Hey, come on, stop. And I like
randomly David Johnson lock bark.
Yeah, I'll give you a name. Chad Williams. He was the number 2 guy.
Yes.
Number 2 on the depth chart for the Cardinals. He's a second-year player. Combine freak is a lot of those, obviously, but he was one of them. And he's ahead of Christian Kirk on the depth chart. And Larry Fitzgerald obviously needs a wingman. So Seals Jones, David Johnson, Chad Williams, one of them has to. I mean, David's David. He'll no matter what. But there's love to go around. And he's very, very cheap. So that's just, if you're one little GPP guy to throw in there, that's someone I'm looking at in season-long fantasy potentially. So definitely for DFS, he could be worth it. A plug.
Cool. I'd like with Jermaine Gresham out. He hasn't even been cleared for contact yet. I do like another punt tight end, and I usually look for these cheap guys, even though there is some risk there. In Ricky Seals-Jones, he's one of the guys I'm looking at as a cheap plug there as well. I think he's a lot safer. I talked about Vanette in the Seattle game, but I'll definitely be looking at Ricky Seals-Jones quite a bit more this week. So that kind of wraps up the Washington-Arizona game. Do you want to get into the Sunday night and the 2 Monday night games?
Just in the interest of not full disclosure, but touching on it, I don't really have any interest in Washington players. Chris Thompson, potentially, because the game script, I guess, would probably favor Arizona. So they'll be throwing a lot to Chris Thompson. But it's a new quarterback. So, Chris Thompson was kind of Kirk Cousins' guy. I'm sure he'll still be heavily involved, but Alex Smith coming into town. He kind of spread the ball out a lot in Kansas City, so I expect to see something similar here in Washington, at least until one of the receivers kind of stands out. But Dotson is like their number one guy, I think. Josh Dotson. Oh, no, sorry, Garcon. What am I saying? Yeah, but like, he's a possession receiver, and he's not going to, run past too many people these days. And by that, I mean, like, for our viewers, they're going to be throwing shorter routes. Dotson's a big play guy, so I guess we'll see what happens. But I've never been a huge Alex Smith fan from DFS, but he's safe, so it's not the worst play in the world.
Yeah, you said Garcon. He's in San Francisco
like to
now.
play quarterback.
You're thinking Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, isn't Garcon still there?
No, he's San Francisco.
Oh, sorry, it's been a long day.
Hey, no problem. I think Crowder because he's a nice slot possession.
I like Crowder, but I like Patrick Peterson more. So
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Cool.
So look, that does it for us. We'll come join the chat. We do lineups for every single slate for DraftKings and FanDuel on Sunday. Skeleton lineups with 2 holes in them to comply with industry standards. But RotoPros.com, we have a 2-week free trial going on. NFL is my baby, and I'm sure Chris feels the same. We freaking love it. It's the best, sport ever, and DFS. And I grew up as a little kid playing regular fantasy, and that's like what sparked my love for this. So to see that, I feel like I've been training for, this Sunday for many, many years. So come sign up, come get our skeletons, and legally win a lot of money on DraftKings and have fun and learn how to play DFS and, make a little extra cash and pay your bills with DraftKings and FanDuel. So sign up at RotoPros.com. It's Friday night. Josh Kronfeld here with Chris Durrell. Good show, man.
Yeah, let's go start building some lineups and join us in chat. I'm going to be in there pretty much all day Saturday, all day or Sunday leading up to lock, and we're going to be covering every single slate on Sunday. So make sure to be in that chat and ask any questions you want. We're going to be there 100%. We got you guys covered. With that, have a great night. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.